Lo y progreso, y gracias a la misericordia. This is Sancista Luis, and I'm doing a video on las muñequitas. Muñequitas are used in the Puerto Rican tradition of Espiritismo and Sanse. They're always kept, well, at least in Puerto Rican tradition, they're always kept in a separate altar from the saints, from the mysteries, the loas, the santos. They're always kept in a separate altar, and some Puerto Ricans place them on chairs, on little tables, on nightstands. And these spirits, or these dolls, are the original voodoo dolls of what American would see when they saw an altar. You know, they go to the Caribbean, and whether it be Haiti or Puerto Rico, Cuba, and they saw these dolls on altars, with candles, lit around them, and they had no idea what these dolls represented. So thus was born the infamous voodoo doll. But they're not really voodoo dolls, they're more spirit dolls. They don't necessarily always have to represent an ancestral spirit, but they can represent an ancestral spirit, as they could represent a spirit guide in your cuadro espiritual, or someone who has passed away, who has influenced your life in some sort of way. In Sanse and Espiritismo, we always keep these muñequitas in their own separate location, often in a little wooden chair by the door, on a nightstand. They're never placed on altars with saints. Some people do place them in la bóveda espiritual, which is okay. Sometimes I do, but most of the time, on a general basis, they have their own little table where I keep them. And each one represents a spirit, whether it be ancestral or spirit guide, or someone that I knew in a past life that influenced my life in some way. When I was younger, 7 or so, I was baptized, and I wasn't baptized. I did my first communion, and one of my teachers was a Catholic nun, great lady, and she passed away, and she was a Puerto Rican nun, and she was one of my first spiritual teachers, and just a beautiful woman. So this nun right here represents her. She has no blood ties to me, but she has become a part of my cuadro espiritual. These two right here represent two of my cousins who have passed away, mother and daughter. So I represent them here. My grandmother was an Indian woman, and in her altar, she had her little Virgin Mary and her altar to her saints, but she also had 2 dolls. I remember her little 2 dolls. One was a gypsy doll. Actually, she wasn't a gypsy, she was a Spanish dancer doll, flamenco dancer, una española. And she also had an Indian doll. She never had a little negrita. So I just got this negrita to represent her. And these over here are the newest ones that I have. And these are cloth dolls. Represent my godfather and my godmother, who gave me my puntos and baptized me in Sanse, in Puerto Rican Sanse. Traditionally, we do not buy the dolls. The dolls are either given to you, or when someone passes away, you inherit the dolls. And the dolls are infused with the energy of the person who owned them before. my grandmother's dolls. One of my aunts inherited them. And in Sansei and Espiritismo, we personally do not purchase our own dolls. They are given to us as gifts. This one right here was given to me by one of my daughters a long time ago. These were given to me here by a friend of mine who saw them online and knew I would love them and got them for a good price. It was a beautiful gift. This one I was in a flea market and a Colombian friend of mine, I liked it and she saw that I liked it and she said, you know what, I'll give it to you as a gift. So this monjita she gave me as a gift. The only ones that I personally purchased are these. And I purchased them because of my godfather in the Puerto Rican Sansei tradition. And they represent the spirit guides, or not the spirit guides, his papa and his mama in Sansei. His guardian angels, or his loas. This one right here represents my godfather, but it also represents my godfather's loa de cabeza, his papa, and represents Asaka de pie, which is a loa or a mystery of agriculture. And his wife, Maria de la Cabeza. In Haitian Voodoo, Asaka de pie is known as Kosensaka, and his wife. So I purchased these because my godfather's anniversary of his death is coming up. So I wanted to place something in my altar to represent him. These palanganas right here have a rosa de Jericho. And this punto firmado has a lot of symbology to me. This represents serpents, but it also represents water. The three crosses, they all have a symbology to me. And how we use them in Sansei, mostly in Sansei. Not so much in Espiritismo. In Spiritismo, no puntos firmados are used. This is more Sansei. These muñecos right here are made out of like a cloth material. I'll pick her up carefully. She looks like a Madama. And, let's see if I can get this with one hand. Very well made. Looks like a Madama. And again, represents my godparents in Sansei, Puerto Rican Sansei. My godfather, my grandmother. These have spirits in them. You know, they're spirit dolls. Again, you never purchase them. The only reason why I purchased these are as a gift to the memory of my godfather and my godmother, but mostly to my godfather, who is, the date of his death is coming up. This my daughters gave to me. A friend saw these online, and when he showed them to me, I was like, wow. And he said, you know, I'm going to give them to you as a gift, and they represent. At first I had an idea, well, this is going to represent Marie Laveau and Tituba or whatever, but when you see, you know, the muñecas in front of your face, you know who they belong to. And Rosita and Michaela, two of my cousins, they just came to mind. May they rest in peace. And this is that nun teacher that was one of my, you know, the teacher who taught me about my confirmation. And I was an altar boy when I was a child. I used to be, I still am. I practice it. I go to church on Sundays, but she was a great teacher, wise woman, a small little Puerto Rican woman of 5'2", Indian complexion, even though she's this nun is white, but it represents her. Again, this is Sansei, more than Espiritismo right here. This part right here not really used in Espiritismo. It's used mostly in Sanse. Well, this over here is more, can be Sanse, but it's more Espiritismo. And they are known as Muñequitas, or Muñequito for the male. These are what, you know, people who would have gone to these places and seen these dolls on these altars, you know, would have thought, you know, that their origins are from, you know, the Bantu and Congo or parts of Africa. You know, and they saw these dolls, and this is where the whole voodoo doll craze came up, but they're called spirit dolls, muñequitas. Again, you don't purchase them. The only reason I purchased these again is because in honor of my godfather and my godmother in Sanse, as a gift to them. And they're brand new, so I'm preparing them at the moment. She's the one that I've had the longest time, and then she's been with me for a while too. These I've had for, I'd say a month. But if traditionally it was these two right here, and it just grew. These are muñequitas in the Puerto Rican Sanse tradition, Puerto Rican Espiritismo tradition, also used in Santeria or Ocha in Cuba. And they represent not always necessarily someone in your ancestral line, but it could be someone in your ancestor, but mostly someone that you knew in life that passed away. You know, and they can be placed in la mesa espiritual or in la bóveda. But in my mesa espiritual or my bóveda is where I keep an altar with pictures. I've only got a few pictures of my grandparents and my aunts who've passed away, my uncles who've passed away. So I've got their own separate altar, and then I have this altar to los muñequitos, and I always keep this little altar, and sometimes I move them around. I place them in like a wooden chair, una silla de paja, something like this, una silla de paja, and I place them in a silla de paja. Sorry. But these are what people would have seen, you know, in altars in the Caribbean, and that whole voodoo doll came to be. And the origins are from Congo. You know, the Africans that were brought to Puerto Rico, at least, speaking of Puerto Rico, were of Yoruba and of the Congo nations. And they brought their traditions, their customs. And it manifested within time. It grew, it changed, it transformed into what is now known as las muñequitas in Puerto Rico. This is more right here, it's Espiritismo, but it can be, and it is also used in Sanse. Not so much used in the 21 division. And over here, this is Sanse. It has a spiritual meaning of why I do that. But again, these represent my godparents, but it also represents the Saint Isidore, or the Loa Asaka de Pie, or Cosensaka, as he is known in Haitian Voodoo. This is Maria de la Cabeza. They're rag dolls, real beautiful. Thank you for watching. And these are spirit dolls. We believe they have spirits within them. They are very tricky. Sometimes they'll move. People have said that they've moved, that they walk around. I mean, a lot of folklore in Puerto Rico has been attributed to these dolls. Thank you for watching, and have a great night. This is San Sista Luis.